Saturday mornings at Pacific Dunes Golf Club were sacred to my father. For almost a year, I'd managed to dodge his invitations, but this time, he wouldn't take no for an answer. Over breakfast, he leaned in with that familiar mix of hope and pressure. "Just 9 holes, Leah. Mr. Harrington's been asking about you. Great networking opportunity." Networking. Sure. That's how I ended up standing on the first tee at 8:30 a.m., wearing a borrowed golf shirt and forcing a polite smile while Dad set up his shot. His prestigious foursome gathered Mr. Harrington, the shipping tycoon, Mr. Patel, who owned half the waterfront real estate in Seattle, and Dr. Grant, the orthopedic surgeon for pro athletes. "Gentlemen," Dad said, "you remember my daughter, Leah?" Mr. Harrington's silver hair glinted in the sun as he smiled. "Of course. How's the job search going, dear?" There it was, the question that haunted Dad's weekends. He jumped in before I could answer. "She's being selective about her next move. Wants the right fit." Selective? That's what Dad called what he assumed was my unemployment. Mr. Patel nodded. "Smart strategy. Market's tough for young grads." Young grads? I was 34, with a PhD from Stanford, but to them, I was still the quiet kid from holiday brunches. I opened my mouth to correct them, but Dad's hand landed on my shoulder like a warning. "She's been doing some consulting work," he added, "keeping her options open." Consulting work. That's one way to describe running Novacor Technologies, the renewable energy company that just signed a $3,100,000,000, 0 cents, federal contract to modernize the U.S. power grid. Dr. Grant paused mid-swing. "If you're interested in healthcare, I know folks at Evergreen Medical. Good pay, stable career." "That's generous," I said evenly. "But I'm focused on clean energy." "Energy?" Mr. Harrington raised an eyebrow. "Hard field to break into without serious backing." If only he knew the White House had called me yesterday. "Lots of established players," Mr. Patel added. "Maybe start with something entry-level." Entry-level. I held 19 patents in solar grid optimization and led the company redefining global energy infrastructure. "The key is managing expectations," Mr. Harrington advised. "Young people today get these grandiose ideas about changing the world." Grandiose ideas. My grandiose idea was worth $4,800,000,000, 0 cents. "Find something steady," Dr. Grant agreed. "Turn your passion into a hobby later." Hobby. Yesterday, my hobby earned me a personal call from the Secretary of Energy. "Leah understands that," Dad said quickly. "She's just exploring her options." What Dad didn't know, I wasn't unemployed. I was the woman about to change the energy future of an entire nation. "You know what might help," Mr. Harrington said, pulling out his phone. "Update your LinkedIn. No recent work, no headshot." My LinkedIn, the one I keep minimal because every update triggers a flood of investor emails. "I'll keep that in mind," I said lightly. "And consider relocating," Dr. Grant added. "Energy jobs are in Houston or Denver. You can't build a career from a laptop at home." From that laptop in my converted Soma warehouse. I'd built a multi-billion-dollar empire. "She's not living at home," Dad interjected quickly. "She has her own place." If only they knew just how big that place was. "It's just modest," Dad said, his diplomatic way of admitting he was embarrassed by my lifestyle choices. "Nothing wrong with modest," Dr. Grant offered kindly, "but eventually you want something that reflects your ambitions. Image matters in business." Image matters. Last week, I'd had dinner with the Secretary of Energy to discuss grid modernization policy, but sure, my biggest problem was image. "The real key is networking," Mr. Harrington added, warming to his role as career counselor. "Can't just apply online, you need face-to-face connections." "Like today," Dad said brightly, "this is exactly what Leah should be doing." Mr. Patel, finishing his swing, smiled. "You know what? I have a niece about your age. Took 2 years to find her footing, but now she's in marketing. Sometimes it just takes patience." Patience. I'd had plenty. 3 years in stealth mode building revolutionary grid storage technology while everyone assumed I was wasting my education. The important thing, Dr. Grant continued as we walked to the second tee, is not letting pride block practical opportunities. I see young people turn down solid entry-level roles because they think they're overqualified. Overqualified. 3 months ago, I was the keynote speaker at the International Energy Summit, but maybe I was just being picky. Leah's not like that, Dad said, though uncertainty edged his tone. She's practical. Practical. Like personally investing $180 million, 0 cents, in R&D before anyone else believed quantum storage was viable. You know what might help? Mr. Harrington said eagerly. I know people in energy, nothing high level, but great entry points. Entry points. He was offering to help me land entry-level positions in an industry where I was about to become one of its most powerful voices. That's very kind, I said sincerely, even if unnecessary. We should set up informational interviews, Dr. Grant added, his excitement growing. Help Leah understand how the industry really works. Understand the industry. I held more renewable energy patents than anyone under 40, but sure. Let's start with informational interviews. By the 4th hole, we'd covered more career advice than golf, and I almost felt sorry for Dad. He'd clearly been covering for me for months, spinning stories to protect his reputation among friends whose kids were all textbook success stories. What you really need, Mr. Patel said as we waited for the green to clear, is a mentor, someone who's navigated the business world. Excellent idea, Dad agreed immediately. Leah would benefit from that kind of guidance. A mentor. My current board included a former Secretary of Energy, a Nobel Prize-winning physicist, and the founder of Europe's largest renewable energy firm. But I guessed they weren't the mentors Mr. Patel had in mind. I'd be happy to help, Mr. Harrington chimed in. Start with the basics: cover letters, interview techniques, professional presentation. Professional presentation. 2 months ago, Anderson Cooper interviewed me for 60 minutes about the future of clean energy. But sure, maybe I needed tips on handshakes. And confidence building, Dr. Grant added. You've been quiet today. In business, you need to advocate for yourself. Quiet. I was quiet because I was navigating a surreal conversation where 4 powerful men were giving remedial advice to someone who'd accomplished more in their industries than they had in theirs. She's always been reserved, Dad offered. But you're right, she needs to learn self-promotion. Self-promotion. Forbes called me the most transformative energy entrepreneur of the decade, but apparently I needed help getting my message out. As we reached the 5th tee, Mr. Harrington pulled out his phone. You know what? Let me call my friend Mark Thompson. Runs a renewable consulting firm. Small, but perfect for someone starting out. Starting out? He was about to offer me an entry-level job at a company that licenses tech based on my patents. That's really not necessary, I began. Nonsense, he waved me off. Mark's great with young people. He actually started dialing. The gesture was so kind and so wildly misguided that I almost felt guilty. Mr. Harrington, before you... No need to be nervous, he said warmly. Mark's very approachable. Dr. Grant smiled. This is exactly what you need, Leah. Sometimes, one person believing in you opens all the doors. If only they knew which doors I already owned. You won't believe what happened when they finally learned the truth about me. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the moment everything changes. One person believing in me, the president had personally called to congratulate me on our Department of Energy contract, but apparently Mr. Harrington's faith was touching too. Mark, Bill Harrington here, he said cheerfully into his phone. I've got a brilliant young woman for that junior analyst opening. Junior analyst. I was about to be recommended for a role analyzing the same market trends my company was creating. Yes, energy sector. Stanford PhD, very sharp, just needs the right opportunity. That's when Monsieur Patel, mid-swing, suddenly froze and turned toward me. Wait, he said slowly. What did you say your last name was? Morgan, Leah Morgan. His eyes narrowed, scanning my face. Why do you look so familiar? Dad chuckled nervously. She has one of those faces. People always think they recognize her. But Mr. Patel wasn't buying it. He pulled out his phone, fingers flying. Leo Morgan, Energy, Stanford. I watched him Google me, fully aware of what he'd find. Holy hell. His face drained of color. Bill, hang up that phone. What? Harrington frowned, still mid-conversation. Hang up now. The urgency in Patel's tone made him end the call immediately. Mark, I'll call you back. All three men were staring now. Patel looked at his screen like it might explode. Gentlemen, he said, voice low, I think we've made a major mistake. What kind of mistake? Dr. Grant demanded. Patel turned his phone toward them. On the screen was yesterday's CNBC headline, a photo of me in a navy suit across from the anchor. Leah Morgan, CEO of NovaCore Technologies, sends $3,100,000,000 0 cents, Department of Energy, contract. The silence was electric. Dad's expression shifted from confusion to shock. You're the quantum energy CEO from the news, Harrington whispered. The one who solved grid storage, Dr. Gray added faintly. Stereotyping the funded. The youngest person ever to sign a multi-billion-dollar federal deal, Patel finished. All eyes turned to me. Yes, I said simply. That's me. Dad's golf club slipped from his hands, clattering against the tee box. Mr. Harrington struggled for words. Your father said you were looking for work. I didn't say that, I replied softly. Dad did. Every head turned toward my father. He looked at me like he'd never seen me before. Leah, he said slowly, when you said you were working in energy, you meant you own an energy company? I founded it, built it from nothing over the past 3 years. 3 years, Mr. Patel repeated. The same 3 years your father's been saying you were figuring out your direction. I was figuring out my direction, I said, and revolutionizing clean energy storage in the process. Dr. Grant was now frantically scrolling his phone. Forbes 30 under 30, Times most influential leaders. His voice trailed off. The consulting work, Harrington said weakly, looking at Dad. Apparently meant running a Fortune 500 company, Dad muttered. The absurdity sank in. They'd spent an hour offering career tips to the woman who'd just rewritten the global energy playbook. The entry-level positions we suggested. Patel shook his head. And the networking advice, Dr. Grant added. We told you to meet people in energy. Well, she's probably on speed dial with every major player, Harrington finished. Dad stared at me, dazed. Why didn't you tell me? Because every time I tried, you thought I was being unrealistic. Remember when I mentioned patent filings? You worried I was burning cash. When I said research facility, you asked if I could afford the rent. Patel glanced up from his phone. Research facility? You mean the 50,000 square foot complex downtown everyone's been speculating about? That's the one. Bought it for $18 million 0 cents cash and turned it into a quantum research lab. The three men exchanged stunned looks. Dad's voice was barely a whisper. Leah, what is your company worth? As of yesterday, $4,800,000,000 0 cents. But after the federal contract announcement, closer to $6 billion 0 cents. My personal stake, 73%. The silence was deafening. More silence as they did the math. Still your worth? Mr. Patel asked slowly. About $4,800,000,000 0 cents, I said. Dad sank heavily onto the bench. 4.8 billion. It fluctuates, I added lightly. But yes, the modest apartment he'd worried about, a converted Soma warehouse I'd bought for $3,200,000 0 cents. I liked the industrial aesthetic. And you don't drive a luxury car because, Dr. Grant ventured, because I think conspicuous consumption is wasteful. The Honda gets me where I need to go. Dr. Grant looked down at his phone. Says here you're speaking at Davos next month. Next week, actually, I corrected. Panel on sustainable energy with the German Chancellor. And you've been appointed to the President's Science Council, Harrington added faintly. Accepted that last month. Harrington looked physically ill. Leah, I just tried to get you a $45,000 0 cents a year analyst job. It was thoughtful of you, I said gently. You meant well. Patel shook his head. Your father's been apologizing for months about your career struggles. While his daughter was becoming one of the most influential entrepreneurs of her generation, Dr. Grant added. And we've been feeling sorry for him, Harrington muttered, talking about what a shame it was that someone so smart couldn't find her way. Dad stared at me, eyes shining with something between awe and regret. Leah. All that worry I've been carrying. I know, Dad. I'm sorry I didn't explain better. I just got tired of arguing about whether my goals were realistic. Realistic, Patel echoed, laughing softly. We were telling the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company to consider entry-level positions and to take informational interviews, Dr. Grant said, grinning, at firms that probably license her patents. When Mark asks why I hung up, Harrington muttered, What do I even tell him? Tell him you discovered the person you were trying to help owns the tech his firm depends on. Dr. Grant started laughing, genuine and incredulous. Bill, you just tried to get the founder of NovaCore an entry-level job. Dad shook his head slowly. I feel like such a fool. Don't, I said softly. You feel like a father who cared. That's never foolish. But I've been making excuses for you to my friends for months, Dad said quietly. And now, I replied gently, you can tell them your daughter just signed the largest clean energy contract in U.S. history. The mood finally shifted, shock giving way to something like pride. The confidence advice we gave you, Dr. Grant said with a weak laugh, wasn't bad advice. Presentation skills always matter, though you've clearly presented to everyone who counts. I have now, I admitted, but I remember starting out, not knowing anyone. Your advice would have been valuable then. Harrington slid his phone back into his pocket. When we told you to be confident in interviews, I was taking mental notes myself. Even successful people can improve their communication, I said. I wasn't humoring you, I was listening. Success in one area doesn't mean I can't learn from people who've mastered another. Patel nodded thoughtfully. That humility is probably why you've achieved so much. Even when the advice comes from people who don't realize you're already miles ahead, Dr. Grant added, shaking his head. We've somehow turned a golf outing into the strangest career counseling session in country club history. So what now? Dad asked. Do we finish the round? I looked at these men who'd spent an hour trying to help someone they thought was lost, only to discover she'd changed the world. I'd love to finish, I said, though maybe we talk about something other than my job search. Deal, Dad said quickly. Then he grinned. Though I reserve the right to ask about quantum energy storage, since apparently my daughter is reshaping the future of electricity while I was worried about her rent. That's fair, I said, smiling. As we walked toward the 6th tee, Harrington fell into step beside me. Leah, I hope you know, everything this morning came from genuine care. I do. And I'm grateful. Your advice wasn't wrong, it was just misdirected. The impulse to help someone succeed, that's never wrong. He smiled. Your father raised a very gracious daughter. He raised someone who believes successful people lift others up, even when they don't realize how high that person has already climbed. And with that, we finished our round. Not as a worried father and a struggling daughter, but as a family finally seeing each other clearly. What would you have done in my shoes? For 3 years, I kept my dream quiet, even when my own father thought I was failing. Was I wrong to stay silent until success spoke for me? Tell me in the comments. Should I have told him sooner, or let my results do the talking? And if you've ever been underestimated, how did you handle it? Share your advice, someone reading might need it today. And don't forget to subscribe, because the story isn't over yet. There's so much more I want to show you. They called me the family disappointment. Not always to my face, but I heard it in whispers.